My name is Nelson. I'm a graduate student in political science and one of the hosts of the podcast Dixieland of the Proletariat.
I am the entity known as the former pig farmer Tyler. I'm an idiot. I'm trying to do good, trying to be a good lefty, but yeah, that's about it.
I'm Tommy. I play games and I'm the host on Dixieland of the Proletariat, and I edit the show sometimes. So all the horrible things and the mistakes and the terrible quality is all my fault. So you're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm Kai. I'm the token Indian on the show, and also the token woman on the show, and also the token serious one on the show. And I live in England. Here we are, it's a Southern podcast, and I live in England.
Interesting. Well, it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to have all of you on. This has sort of been a long time coming. I've wanted to do a collaboration with Dixieland for a while, so this is it. So thank you all for coming on, and let's just go ahead and get into the conversation. But let's start with the podcast itself. So for those that don't know, what is Dixieland of the Proletariat? What are you trying to accomplish with it, and how did you all come together to create it initially?
So the podcast Dixieland of the Proletariat, basically what had happened was
started from a meme and shared on Facebook.
Actually, we started the page and it started sharing memes and it blew up from there. But the original idea for the podcast, I was listening to a lot of pros of the roundtable, old pros, shout out to them, and I was like, you know what, I could do this. And then being a generic white dude that's bald with a beard, I was like, you know what, I could definitely do a podcast. And
you can do a lot of things with the confidence of a white man.
So then I got up with friends, one of them including Tyler, and I was like, I've been noticing a lot of folks on social media just interested in the South because everyone's really interested in Appalachia, right? So like Blair Mountain, et cetera, the whole mystique of Appalachia, the whole thing is it's very popular on social media. But then people started really having questions about the South, the deep South. And no one really knew how to answer those things. And a lot of people had moved away from the South. And I was like, you know what? We should do something to give people, to break misconceptions about the South. Because what had happened a lot of times where I would go up north, because half my family, I'm half Yankee. So I would go up north and I would have people legitimately ask me, have I ever been to a Klan meeting? Or do I fuck my cousin? And I was like, is this all y'all think about when you think of the South is banjos and racists? And I was just like, I know plenty of people that aren't like that. I know plenty of people in my family that aren't like that. Obviously my friends are not like that. There's a deep radical history of the South that just is not told. And so I was like, you know what? We could platform people to tell this story that are not what people think or what comes to mind when people think of the South. So the idea was to come together and to do this. And I had a friend that had a studio. So we just sat down. We had a theme one night. The first episode we did was Blood and Coal, about coal mining. And we went from there and we just started, and it's built, it's grown. We've brought in different hosts, and right now it is what it is right now. And the idea is, like I said, to really give people a different idea what the South is. It's the most diverse region of the country. And when I tell people that 55% of the Black population in the United States live in the South, their heads explode. They don't understand it, because you see liberals all the time, let the South go, nuke the South. But it's if you do that, then you literally are telling marginalized people and poor people that live here that y'all don't matter, that we don't matter. And so the idea was to do that, to platform people who can tell that story, to tell a different history. And really at the name of the podcast, Dixieland of the Proletariat, came to me from a play on dictatorship of the proletariat. And the idea was like to do that and to do, it's a play on dictatorship of the proletariat. We can do everything. But like how in my mind, I couldn't find the words to describe it until we had a host come on and they said, I understand what y'all are doing. You're taking traditional Southern identity and using it in a way to promote a message that people normally would not hear. So the idea is to get people, whether they be, Yankee liberals or Southern conservatives that are working class, to listen and to be like, hey, I didn't know that about the South. And I'll give you an example where that's worked. I have a friend of mine from college that works in a shipyard in South Alabama. And in 2016, he voted for Trump. And after listening to the podcast, he'll call me up, like almost after every podcast, he calls me, we're talking on the phone. And after listening for a while, he was like, man, I was wrong to vote for Trump. Like, I get it now. Like, unions are good. I don't agree with that stuff that I used to anymore. And now on his hard hat, he wrote, remember Blair Mountain. And so so the idea is to really change people's preconceived notions about the South.
Yeah, plus the other name, 3 crackers and a nigger, were already taken. So we can't use...
I don't think the RSS feed would go out to that many podcast apps with that.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Man, I got to be living proof of how this shit works. Like, I went from a fucking libertarian to an anarchist to a fucking tanky, and now I'm looking at fucking Maoism.
Hell yeah.
Like,
beautiful trajectory.
Yeah, like fucking, it's a great thing.
I like that, though. I love the, especially in the South where there is this sort of, this history that's often obscured and eliminated, to tie that in so people's sort of sense of self-identity and the culture they come from can then be framed within like a broader argument for unions, for socialism, for class struggle, etc. That's the only way it's going to happen. It's certainly not going to happen by some, northern college kid talking down to Southerners about what they should and shouldn't believe.
I got one more thing.
Sure.
It really, this kind of happened recently. We had a guest on and he sounded different than he sounded on TikTok. And I was like, I know he's from the South. He's from Louisiana, and he sounds different. And he was code switching because like people on TikTok, when you hear a Southern accent, especially a distinct one like his from that part of Louisiana, like this preconceived notion that we're stupid. So one of the saddest things when I get messages on social media, we're like, oh my God, yeah, I moved to New York, or I moved to Portland, I moved to Chicago, I moved to, anywhere outside the South. And they have to dramatically hide their accent because their positions on things have been questioned because they have a draw. And I'm talking about people with I'm talking about people that are experts in their fields, like people with upper degrees, like people with that anywhere, if they should be recognized as people who know what they're talking about. But because they have that Southern draw, it's automatically perceive that they're racist and stupid. And real quick, I think Drive-By Truckers said it best. They said that racism is a worldwide problem, and it's a big problem in America, but it's always been played easy with a Southern draw. Like it's always been perceived with a Southern draw.
Hey, fuck, man.
Yeah, and Black Red Guard said it best. Like when he told us what Malcolm X said, if you're below the Canadian border, you're in the South. The entire country is racist.
Absolutely.
Like it's not just the South.
Yeah, one of the and we'll get into misperceptions in a second, but you've already touched on the fact that the South, especially by like naive Northerners, is seen as particularly racist. But there's also these incredibly diverse communities in the South that lots of places in the North don't exist. So you could have Southern communities, working class communities that are much more diverse than these white enclaves that exist all over the North. And you'd probably face more day-to-day racism in some of those northern communities than in those southern ones. But there's like this haughty sense of superiority in the North, specifically around the concept of racism, as if the North isn't just as racist and hasn't historically been the same. And that quote by Malcolm X, I think, gets at that.
Yeah, and I've talked about this a couple times on the show about it because of the diversity and because you can't go anywhere without saying a black person or a white person because we have to interact with each other on a daily basis. We have more people have firsthand experiences dealing with black people rather than how other people get information about black people, which is through TV, the media, and the news, which is not always positive. 90% of the time it's not positive. So that firsthand interaction does a lot to a society than, what you read or see or hear about.
Absolutely.
I think Kai, I don't know if you want to, but like Kai had the best story, like leaving America and going to another country and still experiencing bullshit.
Oh yeah. So I spent the first 20 years of my life in Florida, and I moved to England almost 12 years ago now. And one of the things that I realized upon moving here is that the racism is still there. In some ways, it's even more virulent. But because it has a different accent and because of the way that it's couched within the culture, it's not seen as like a problem to deal with. It's just part of the fabric of everything. So when I got here and I had been given all these ideas that Europe is some kind of great place where racism doesn't exist, mostly because the idea is that Europe is still completely white somehow. So how can you have racism when they're all white? I can tell you it's because they choose which country they're going to be racist against when it comes to the white people. But when I moved here, I realized quickly just what kind of language still exists here. So I already mentioned I'm Native American. And when I've had people come to me and they realize that I'm Native American, either by me saying so or because I'm taking part in a cultural event, I've been called more racist names to my face than I ever did in the United States. And they have no idea that it can be offensive in any way because they never had to think about racism as a problem. They never had to think about the words that they used. And even though I grew up in what everybody considers like the racism hotbed of the world and, in the South and Florida being always considered crazy when it comes to a state. That's not something I ever experienced when I was there. I did have racism done to me, spoken around me, seen lots of it, but it was seen as a problem and seen as an issue that you had to take a certain side on, that I never experienced that kind of nuance to it once I moved to Europe.
That's really interesting. Yeah. There's also the added element, I would assume, of Europe not having like genocided indigenous people on whose land they occupy. And that probably increases the gap of understanding for the average European.
There's actually something to say about that, especially. So I live in England. There's a history of England basically practicing their genocidal tendencies on the Irish. Or they practiced it on the Irish, they practiced it on the Welsh, and they practiced it on the Scottish. And even though this doesn't come down really to a race issue, I mean, depending on how you want to see the difference in Celts versus Normans, there's some phenotypic differences. However, it's not really a race issue. All of those tactics that they used on the Irish, on the Scottish, on the Welsh, ended up just being refined and used for their further colonial interests further down the line. And then you have things elsewhere in Europe where you have the Roma being persecuted no matter where they go. You have the Armenian genocide. You have religious genocide, some kind of cleansing, lots of ethnic cleansing when it comes to Jewish people and all that. It exists here. It's just that they couldn't always point to a skin tone and say, and this is why.
I see. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on and talk about sort of how your experiences living in the South have shaped you. So maybe you could talk about unique experiences that you've had living in the South, but specifically I'm interested in how living in the South has shaped each of your politics.
So, it's funny because myself, Kai, and Tyler will joke about our dads all being like conservatives and right wingers. And so like personally, me growing up, my dad is on the Trump train 100%. He was QAnon before QAnon was QAnon. My mom is Italian. She's from New York, and she's you run them in a liberal. And so like growing up in the South, I think what people need to realize is that like the difference between urban and rural poverty is different, right? So like you'll see poverty in like a big city, right? And there's like tons of resources to help people. Like granted, obviously I'm not saying that there's not problems. There's problems. Resources don't get allocated specifically. But what I've seen firsthand is the effects of how bad rural poverty is when like there is no one around you for miles. And I'll give you a perfect example. In 2014, I helped a friend of mine run for Congress, and we were in the 2nd Congressional District in Alabama, which takes up, I think, 14, 15 counties. Like it's huge, it's massive. And we had to go out like along the Black Belt, right? So like we'd go into counties that weren't in our district to like get donations and support, et cetera, whatnot. So like driving in these rural counties and seeing like people who don't have a pot to piss in, literally, like towns would go in, like their only source of food is a stop and go, like a gas station, right? That might have eggs and milk and cheese. Like there's no grocery store. There might be a Walmart, but if you don't have a car, it's like 50 miles down the road and you don't have anything. They don't have city water. They have well water. They don't. And this is probably one of the most horrible things is you start going out to like Lowndes County, Dallas County, and you go out in the sticks, right? So like people don't have money for septic tanks and there's no county or city water, right? So they straight pipe the shit into their backyards because that's the only thing that they can do. And because of that, you have hookworm. Like for all her problems, AOC finally like brought this to attention. She didn't have to. She was in New York. That like hookworm is a problem in Alabama, a disease that shouldn't be in what you would think America is supposed to be the quote unquote greatest fucking country in the world. We have hookworm in kids because there's shit in their yards. And the UN came through to Alabama, Mississippi, right? And I'm just going to say what they said. And I know that it might not be what the clearest way or the using the right terms or whatnot, but the UN came in and said, Alabama, Mississippi, the deep South, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, right, have third world poverty. And in the quote unquote greatest country in the world, which y'all know is bullshit, like we have these problems. And in the richest country that's ever existed on the face of the earth, we have people that are dying from diseases that shouldn't be, that could be completely, if the government literally went in and just bought people a septic tank, they wouldn't have these problems. But because they don't, and because we rather, fund wars and all other bullshit, that they're straight piping shit into their backyards and kids are dying because of it. So just seeing that rural poverty in the South really was like, even before then, obviously I had my awakening really was in high school when I read the manifesto, but like seeing it firsthand is like, it's in your face and it's just like, wow, like, holy shit. That was basically my, like, even before then, and really that was like the icing on the cake. It was like, what the fuck? Like, this shouldn't happen and people should not have to live like this.
Brutal. Anyone else want to go next?
I mean, just growing up, a lot of minorities growing up, like, are taught that, whitey is bad. And, like, especially me, like my mother, she did, attend a lot of marches, my grandmother, and she raised me. She was there. She talked about how, she marched in Alabama on certain days. Like she has pictures, like, she was in the Rosa Parks Museum. She's done a lot of activism in her day. And I remember from the time growing up, as early as I could, every year, God, I hated it, but I thank her for it today. But she made me and my brother watch Roots, like back to back. I don't know if you've ever seen Roots, but that shit is fucking long. They would have that shit on like TBS for like a week. You had to sit down and watch like an hour of Roots a day. Then I had to write about it. Like, what did I learn from this hour of Roots? Yeah. I learned never to steal from a white man, or he'll cut your foot off.
Jesus.
That's what I learned.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nelson and I went to the same high school, and around then, Bush was in office, and Nelson radicalized me. We talked, and from then on, we've been in this fight. But yeah, I owe a lot of my activism today to Nelson. So
it's beautiful.
Oh, I brought back an Immortal Technique CD from New York.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Nice.
It did. It changed my life. I woke up and I showed him my manifesto, and he said, "No, not that."
Yeah, what got me was like just growing up poor, and my high school was super clicked up, and like I was just wearing like fucking shitty clothes, and like it was just like everybody was so fucking vain. So like it was hard for me to connect with people. And then like once I got out of high school, I rebelled. I found like the metal scene and the hardcore punk scene, and that just like that taught me a really good lesson. That's how I met Tommy. That's how I met Nelson. And it's just like fucking, there's a guy named Ray Bees, and he said, don't forget the struggle, don't forget the streets. Like we're brothers and sisters and all in the same fight. And Nelson fucking radicalized me too. He was a server, I was a cook. We used to always talk shit, and now here we are.
Hell yeah.
I guess I'm going to be the only one who's not going to credit my activism to a white man. Specifically that one who's cackling right now.
That specific one.
Thankfully, I've only known Nelson for a little over a year. But
Yeah, thank God.
Oh my God.
You lucked out.
So, more along Tommy's route. When you grow up not white, you have no choice but to be not white. So my dad's side of the family is white. That's how I have the Trump supporter in my family. But my mom's side is Native American. And there was never a choice. There was never a choice to not be radicalized in some way. And I've told the story before on the show that the first time that I can remember clearly being the one to speak up in front of any kind of authority figure is when I was literally in like the first grade was the first time. Because we would have, so this is in the 90s, it's in the early 90s. We would have, Thanksgiving time, they'd make a paper bag teepee in the classroom and have everybody draw, their dream catchers and all that. And I didn't like that. And my mom didn't like that. So my mom came into the school and insisted on telling actual traditional stories and actual craft things and stuff like that. And then by the time I was in the fourth grade, we had a thing called Colonial Days, which now sounds horrible. I don't know if they would do that these days, but it was called Colonial Days, where every student was given a person who was famous in the colonial era in the United States that we had to learn about. And then on a certain day, we had to dress up like them and go into the school cafeteria and recite facts. So if you had five classrooms, there was one, John Smith and one Virginia Dare in each classroom. So you'd have five John Smiths. And I basically threatened my teacher that if she didn't give me Pocahontas, there would be issues because she was the only Native American on the possible list. And from that point on, Pocahontas has been a passion of mine to learn about her, but also I came into that cafeteria amongst a bunch of little girls wearing Disney's Pocahontas costumes, wearing my own regalia and getting up there and telling what my mom taught me rather than what I got from the Disney movie or what I got from the school library books. And even though that might not be particularly Southern, it did happen in the South, it did happen in Florida. There's no way to not be who my family made me. There was no way for me to not be radicalized from the very moment that I could start speaking. And whether that happened in New York, where my mom's family is from, whether that happened in Baltimore, where my dad's family is from, or whether that happened in Florida, where I was born, it was always going to be like that.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked about some misconceptions of the South. Maybe if anybody wants to touch on more, we haven't obviously addressed them all, but I was hoping you could touch on those and then talk about some of the overlooked positive aspects of the South, because there is this overwhelming, sort of shitting on the South, and we don't often hear anybody saying some positive aspects of it. So you can take that in whatever direction you want. Whoever wants to go first.
I sometimes, and I know that Tommy and Tyler have thanked me for their radicalization. I need to thank Kai for keeping me in check, because I've learned a lot from Kai, and I have had to re-examine a lot of my positions on how I think about certain things. So when I get asked this question, I need to realize that, all right, Nelson, just because you think this certain way, it may not be true. And I think right off the bat, I don't want to be I want to be like, I'm not a Southern apologist, right? My dad is a Confederate apologist. I've heard all that bullshit my entire life, right? And I'm not a Southern apologist. I want to be clear. The South has problems, But what I tell people is this: the South has its problems, but we've progressed to the liberal New England style racism that everybody is comfortable with, everyone being white people. Because my grandfather, my dad's father's from Boston. He's a Guinea from Boston, right? Most racist piece of shit I ever met in my entire life. And when I tell you it was so bad that my mother had to go up to our family business and tell my grandfather, if you do not stop saying the N-word around your grandson, you will never see him again. And he reluctantly, like, getting him to stop saying that word, right, was a chore. And he didn't want to, but he did because he wanted to see his grandson. But that really is like, he's from Boston and he moved to Montgomery, and his racism flourished at that time, but he grew up in New England. And then I have to look at, like, well, Boston rioted in the 70s when they tried to desegregate their schools. So it is really a nationwide problem. I mean, Tommy and I were talking about sundown towns a while back, and Tommy made a good point. He's like, man, I'm black. The entire country's a sundown town. And I was like, shit, fuck, you're right. Like, that's one of those things where, like, I had to check myself. I was like, shit. Like, just because, we talk shit about Coleman, and, like, it just made me stop and think for a second. It's like, God, Tommy is right. Like, I never had that feeling of not being safe going somewhere. And Kai's probably felt the same way as a Native American and as a woman. Like, not feeling safe in certain situations. And me, as, like, the bald, bearded, fat white dude, I've never felt unsafe in a situation. So, like, when I talk about the South, I try to always talk about positive things, but I want to make it clear that I'm not a Southern apologist, and this podcast is not Southern apologizing for, we are apologizing for the bullshit that's happened, but we're not going to be like, the South is fucking perfect and it's just Yankees that are bad. No, obviously the South has its fucking problems. But the point is that when Yankees talk down to us, and they think that we're stupid just because we live in a certain part of the country, or they think that we're racist just because we live in a certain part of the country, that's when they cross the line and be like, whoa, hey, calm down there. Let me learn you something. And in the words of, that's like a total Tyler saying, I totally jacked that from him. But no, I think that one of the, like, some of the big things that you need to touch on, like, everyone talks about Blair Mountain and the coal miners' wars, but, like, that also happened in Alabama. Like, they were miner strikes here. And the big thing that we did an episode on was the Sharecroppers Union. If you have not read Hammer and Hoe, you need to read Hammer and Hoe, because the Communist Party of the United States in the 1930s in Alabama was like 100% black. And they built the Sharecroppers Union, and it was led by black people, and they fought the Klan, they fought cops, they got guns, and they said, fuck you. And they won. They got things that they demanded. And it worked, and it should be a guidebook, a guide to people now that want to organize. I also think that, and this is horrible that I didn't know this until I got into a graduate program about Lowndes County Freedom Organization, like Stokely Carmichael, right, and SNCC. Like, I didn't know that the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, like, their logo, the Black Panther, was what Bobby Seale and Huey Newton got the idea for the Black Panther. Like, they asked Stokely, like, hey, can we use this thing? And he was like, yeah. Like, that whole thing started in the county over from me. Like, and there's also other things they don't talk about. We had our own version of the Tulsa Race Massacre in, I think it was either Barber or Bullitt County. Black people tried to go vote during Reconstruction, and the white folks shot them and massacred a bunch of them because they tried to vote. And there's so many other things that, like, people don't talk. The Scottsboro Boys trial, like I said, the Sharecroppers Union, this whole notion of, like, radical politics in the South is completely overshadowed by the people who were pushed to the forefront, like people like George Wallace and Strom Thurmond and Senator Eastling. And then you also have to touch on, like, people like Huey Long, who was literally saying the same things back then, like you hear, like, quote unquote progressive politicians say today. But, like, Huey Long put, like, force behind that. and did what needed to be done to get things passed. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we touch on the podcast that people come on the show and talk about that need to be said that people really don't think happen in the South. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy that when people actually take the time to listen to Southern voices, they'll hear people saying things that they agree with and that they are like, wow, I didn't know that was down there. And that's what we hope to accomplish.
I think when other people think of the South and think negatively of the South, I want you to say to yourself, how did we get in that position? And there are things that the South is notorious for, and that's poor education, wealth, and among other things. It's still segregated, not by race, but definitely by neighborhood and class, which might as well be the same thing. But you have to understand, like, the South, what you consider the South are one of the first 13 states of this country, built on oppression, created on oppression, and they have mastered the art of oppression. Our laws have written us into poverty, and it is so hard to work yourself out of that because of the way they have redesigned the legislature, where they have all the power. The mayor has no powers in most southern states. Governors have no powers in most southern states. They don't. It's all legislative. And it's hard to fight that, and it's hard to come back from that. And it's all an oligarchy. I can specifically speak on Alabama, that there are, like 4 or 5 major families, 4 or 5 major people that hold power in the state. And that will, no matter who is elected to what office, they hold the power in the state.
Do those families, that rich, powerful those have historical roots that go back, I'm sure, to...
Oh, yeah. Plantation owners, 100%.
Exactly.
In Southern politics, it's a term they're called the big mules. And so, like, the old money families that, when I talk about, and it's not just Alabama, like the South in general, you can go to any Southern state and people know, like, okay, that family runs, et cetera, whatnot. They're the big mules of Southern politics. It's the planter class. It's the textile, the people that came after the planter class that were basically the same as the planter class. They just couldn't run plantations anymore, so they just started big businesses. But like, that old money goes back generations. Like, it wasn't all destroyed during Reconstruction. Like, slave owners got reparations. Slaves didn't. So it's a continual process that is extremely hard to beat, because exactly what Tommy said, like what Tommy said is true, that it's written in a bunch of state constitutions as a check to the populist movement that, like, governors really don't have a lot of power when it comes to the state and how things work. It's the legislature, because they can gerrymander the legislatures and the state senates so that the same people stay in there forever. The same problem that we have in the federal, in Congress, the federal level, is the same problem exacerbated in southern states, because it is literally written in our state constitutions that, like, the governors are not the most powerful people. It's the state leg, and it's hard to get them out of power. Unless you have, like, a Huey Long character come in and had people shot and thrown in the swamp. Like, that was the alternative. And it's extremely hard to unseat these people.
When it comes to things that are positive about the South that people overlook, part of my reason of being on the podcast is to remind people that there are points of view that go beyond 1860, that go beyond 1492, that there are people who have existed in the South for thousands and thousands of years, that indigenous people are original Southerners, and that when we think of the South commonly right now, is that the South is something that was built out of the actions of plantation owners and the Civil War and the legislature that came before and after those things, and the racism that permeates the area. But there's way more to the South, as in the actual global area, as in the people who have been there for thousands of years, than the actions of the colonizer country, of the United States. They are a colonizer. It is not only their history that matters. So one of the first things that I did, I first appeared on the show as just a guest, and I would come on and do Indigenous history. And I've done it of several areas, one of those being Stone Mountain in Georgia. And I always start my episodes by going back as far as I possibly can in the history, and that being sometimes up to 14,500 years of human habitation in these areas. And that the South is also an area of extreme natural beauty, of environments that you can't get anywhere else in the world. Things like the Everglades being as important as they are for pollution, for cleaning the water and all these things, for animals that don't exist anywhere else in the world. And unfortunately, the South is one of those areas that was colonized so early and so quickly that we've lost so many of those resources, of those animals, of those habitats, that people don't even think of the South as being so unique and so beautiful because of the land and because of the indigenous people there. That I've explained on the show, it's very, very difficult to talk about the indigenous history of the South because the South is one of the first areas to be impacted by foreign-born diseases when colonizers came over. So indigenous people dropped by the hundreds of thousands very, very early on. And even though the written European record is not the be-all, end-all of history, it is what we're using right now to try to piece together this history of people that existed here before the colonizers came, or how their daily lives ran when colonizers first appeared on those shores. But because they died off so quickly, we're having to build those histories back purely through speculation and digging and trying to piece together stories that might have existed within cultural boundaries, oral histories and things like that, things that Western science and historians don't like to acknowledge, that these histories exist and that they are valid, even though it's an oral history. So when people think of the South, I want them to, there's no way that we can erase what the South is now because of the colonizers' actions, because of the Civil War, because of the racism, because of chattel slavery that ended up being pooled in the South. We can't change any of that. That is definitely how the story of the land is progressing at the moment. However, I want people to see it as more than that. There is land here. There's natural monuments. There's indigenous history. There's natural history. There's geology. There's incredible just natural areas. Like, I never knew how beautiful Alabama was until Nelson started showing pictures of when he goes hiking. And that's coming from somebody who came on the show to expose those areas of the South. And I had no idea that Alabama was like that. And as much as all of these things matter, as much as the Civil War matters and everything that happened from 1619, about 1492 and then 1619, and everything that's happened since then matters. There's more to it than just what the government has done, what colonizers have done, and how that's shaped everything since then.
Incredibly well said. Absolutely. The furthest south I've ever been is Louisville, Kentucky, unfortunately. But I know there's lots of beauty down there that I really am interested in exploring if it's ever feasible financially for me to do so. I think that's an important point. I think a lot of people, too, in their head, because of all these stereotypes about the South, it's sort of, when you think of the most beautiful places in the United States, I don't even think it's often even considered. You look to the Mountain West or the Pacific Northwest, but there's lots of beauty that goes completely unrecognized in the South, as there is where I live here in the Midwest, which is also, I think, sometimes written off in that sense as well. But there's real beauty everywhere, obviously.
No, it really is. Like it's the South is one of the most forested, beautiful, natural sceneries. They call Alabama like the Amazon of North America, because all the waterways and just the everything we have, the natural beauty, that is Alabama. And it's sad that people write it off completely because of stereotypes. And I think that if more people were to explore the South, that they would see that it's a lot better and a lot more beautiful than people give it credit for.
I think if people had at least one chance to stand in an unspoiled mangrove off the coast of Florida, and you can see the manatees and you can see the color of the water. Or you go down to the Everglades, and unfortunately it's being overrun by invasive species at the moment. But if you go down there and you see the alligators and you can smell that peaty smell of kind of plant decay and water and heat from the sun, or if you go somewhere like Stone Mountain and you see something that's geologically so interesting and so eye-catching without the Confederate carvings that are on it. You know, if you have a chance to see these things, they make a mark on you, and they should be more treasured than they are at the moment, just because they're in what is considered a tainted part of the United States.
That disgusting, massive participation trophy. Like it's
built
so
by the KKK and the Daughters of the Confederacy.
God. Oh my God. I hate that bullshit so goddamn much. Like I hate like the just anything like people the Confederacy. God, anyone. Anyway, fuck Robert E. Lee.
Absolutely.
Alabama has a ton of waterfalls too, by the way.
Really?
It's great. Yeah. I almost drowned near one, but
Oh my God.
Got a lot of good squirrel hunting out there.
Nice.
That is true.
Nelson isn't wrong that Alabama has really distinctive geological and natural features. And I didn't realize this until I had met them, that that area, this kind of area of multiple river basins and all that, has more ecological diversity than most of the rest of the United States.
Wow.
I think, and also just to piggyback on what Kai's saying and like tie it all into history, like
Yeah.
in one of my Southern politics classes, like the professor starts off with like a wildlife, like geography lesson about the South and how that directly impacted the history of the South. Because like there was a meme going around like a while ago that was where the most fertile soil is in the South is the Black Belt, has the highest percentage of Black people, is also where all the plantations were.
I saw
so
that,
like
yeah.
because the soil and the sediment and everything from millions of years ago made this some of the most fertile farmland, that impacted farming, which then brought slavery, et cetera, et cetera. So like it all ties in, but the problem is Kai hit the nail on the head. Like it's so beautiful, but people forget that, and people don't know about this because all you see is what Kai says is colonizer history. And there's so much more to the South than that.
Absolutely. Well, let's go. I want to talk about the pandemic and climate change, but I think we'll end on those. So let's just talk now about how the specific struggles that have happened we've mentioned some of them throughout. There were indigenous struggles and continue to be. There's Black struggles and continue to be. And so much of the racism and the stereotypes about the South, this one-sided view where, you know, it's the white reactionaries that people remember in history, that, you know, the loudmouths and the Klan and the Confederates. But those are all also shaped and inherently imply the ongoing, never-ending resistance by those they sought to oppress and dominate. And so that struggle has shaped the entire region and, of course, the entire country. So can you talk about some of the struggles that maybe people might not be fully aware of, and just how Black and indigenous struggles in particular have shaped the politics and culture of the South?
Well, I'll speak specifically about one struggle, is the fact that a lot of these public schools are named after, you know, Civil War heroes, like, you know, Robert E. Lee, Jefferson. Actually, yeah, all the Montgomery public schools are. Yeah, Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis. What's the other one?
Sidney Lanier.
Yeah,
I think
Lanier.
I think he was the poet laureate of the Confederacy or something. I don't know, but it's tied in there somewhere.
And you know, just that every day, and the fact that we don't invest any money into our public schools, and it shows. Our public schools are run down. There are no teachers. They're all just, you know, most of these classrooms are filled with substitute teachers. They can't find people that hold, you know, actual teaching positions because they go to the charter schools and the private schools here. where they do actually make money. That struggle specifically, man, it's been so long. We actually got the Robert E. Lee statue taken down during the whole BLM riots last year, and someone actually took the statue down, and that was great. But they're still there. The names are still there, and we're still fighting to get those names removed.
It's like the legacy of the Confederacy is like graffiti over the otherwise beautiful South. The statues and the carvings and all the names of the public institutions.
Yeah, and like what road is that? I don't know what road it is. I'm terrible with roads, but there's a giant Sons of the Confederacy, that giant flag out there.
Yeah, on I-65 between Montgomery and Birmingham is a massive.
I got a League of the South 2 minutes away from my house, like their clubhouse, and it's just.
Yeah. And there's a massive Confederate flag on I-65 between Montgomery and Birmingham. It's like, Sons of the Confederate veterans, learn your history. And it's just like, fuck off.
We got one of those in Florida, too.
It pops up 5 minutes after the billboard that says, go to hell or the devil will get you.
Jesus.
Yeah.
We have a Confederate flag on 75, I think. 75 or 95. Right outside a very large city, owned by the Daughters of the Confederacy.
Jesus.
The joke is like the only one that should be allowed to stand is that one on private property of Nathan Bedford Forrest, because it just looks horrible. Like it's literally like one of the worst pieces of, I'm not even going to call it art. It's like the statue is disgusting. And it's like, if this is what white supremacy is supposed to be, then all right, cool. Because he looks stupid.
It looks like shit.
Yeah, just complete shit. It's just bad.
It can stay if we get a placard that says horse fucker on it or something. Because anybody who doesn't know, Nathan Bedford Forrest was really enamored of his horse.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
Yeah. It fucking the joke is like also Robert E. Lee like fucking loved his fucking horse. He's buried next to us. They dug up his horse. They buried Lee and they buried his horse like right next to him. So the joke is that Lee fucked his horse.
There's several of them in the South.
Oh, definitely.
Quote an old friend: the only Confederate that needs a statue is the cockeyed cousin fucker who shot Stonewall.
It's some sort of damn Yankee trick. That guy gets a statue. Cockeyed cousin fucker who shot Stonewall Jackson.
Well, if it's specifically indigenous issues in the South, what I would say is the largest kind of overarching issue. We have kind of the same grievances as Tommy was talking about, that we have a lot of horrible colonizer history naming our public institutions that Black and indigenous people have to deal with if we're going to live in what is now the United States. But beyond that, I would say for indigenous people in specific, it's that the tribes in the South have almost no institutional power. And it kind of comes back to what I was saying, that Southern tribes are some of the first affected by diseases when the conquistadors and everybody started coming to the South. That it drastically dropped the numbers of people. And then we had issues of, when you look at the indigenous history, it's kind of up to a certain point, a lot more tribes were trying assimilation to deal with the colonizers rather than outright fighting. And as the United States became more of a country and it started westward expansion, those tribes were kind of seeing the effect of this assimilation tactic and decided, no, we're going to fight instead, because it was less of we need to outright, the colonizers were less thinking we need to outright kill everybody when they were dealing with the earlier tribes, especially in the Eastern Seaboard and in the South. And as they moved westward, it turned into outright killing everybody they could. So that's what started your Indian Wars and stuff like that. But because of these low numbers, this assimilation, and then you had things that were purposely drawing indigenous people out of the South. The Trail of Tears was not just one Trail of Tears. There were several Trails of Tears, multiple forced marches out of their territories and into Indian territory, ended up in Oklahoma. And then you had the Seminole who were escaping the colonizers further north and escaping down into Florida and basically walling themselves off from everyone else to protect themselves. So you have very, very small pockets of indigenous people throughout the South now who don't command any power when it comes to dealing with the colonizers. And that's not to say that any other tribe has necessary power when it comes to dealing with colonizers. Most of the time, these are what is considered sovereign nations. Native nations are considered sovereign nations, although the United States does not treat them like that. In the South, their populations are so small, and there was so much kind of assimilation that we end up fighting each other rather than fighting the common enemy. And then you have places like Georgia, which has literally 0 recognized federal tribes in Georgia. And I didn't know that until last year. And you would think, for somebody like me who's so used to looking at indigenous history and knowing where the pockets of indigenous population are, I didn't think it was possible that Georgia could have 0 federally recognized tribes, because there are so many Georgia Cherokee, there are so many Lumbee who ended up moving further south. There's so many Creek who, even though they were traditionally further west than Georgia, they could have moved into Georgia, but there are no federally recognized tribes there. And if you are not federally recognized, you have no power to bargain or seek funds or anything for your tribe as people. And that it's a sucking away of the power in these places that has, they didn't need to commit full-on physical genocide anymore. They could just paper it all away. They could paper away people's federal recognition. They could paper away the tribe's existence as a whole. They could paper away and say, well, you don't meet the quantum standards, so you are no longer Lumbee or Cherokee or Creek or Muskogee. It became less about physical bodies and more about just making them disappear slowly. So for us, it's the South had original Southerners. It had original people who lived on these lands that are slowly disappearing. The languages are disappearing. I have an uncle, an adopted uncle in my family, because I am not Muskogee personally, but my uncle is one of, I would say 5, but I think a couple have died recently, one of less than 5 fluent speakers of the Muskogee language. Wow. 5 of one of the largest tribes that used to exist in the United States. Damn. And this has led to people like my uncle really eschewing anything to do with what is the United States and living off grid and teaching his children only Muskogee. You only speak Muskogee when you're on that land, and trying to produce enough food to subsist out there. They're one of the few places in Alabama, because they are in Alabama, that have buffalo free roaming in the area. Buffalo did used to exist as far down south as Alabama, but you wouldn't think that now because of the destruction of the buffalo and everything. So for indigenous people, there's this lack of power, this lack of recognition. When you think of tribes, you think of Western tribes. You might think of Northern tribes kind of further up into Canada and all that, but you do not think of Southeastern tribes. So we just kind of exist as ghosts on our own land. And that recognition, we're getting better at it by having things like land recognitions. Nelson does one at the end of all of our shows. Just to kind of put the idea out there that indigenous people are here. They were here. They are here. They continue to be here, and that this land is not something that belongs to the United States. This land doesn't belong to indigenous people either, but we were here first, and we take it very seriously to take care of that land in ways that colonizers aren't doing. So might as well acknowledge us above anybody else at that point. But that's what I think of when it comes to indigenous issues in the South.
Let me tell you real quick how I met Kai. We did our second episode on the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, and we released it. And
Kai fucking killed our ass.
Oh my god! When I tell you I was scared shitless when Kai messaged us, and I was like. And she was like, I'm an indigenous woman, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm watching blah, blah, blah. And you did, et cetera, and gave tips and points. And I was just like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I want to say we referred to Chiefs as an anarchist.
What?
Some wild shit like that.
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, my God. And I was like, hi, Kai. Thank you so much. And I was just like, what Kai said was 100% true. It was like, and like afterwards, I was like, shit, I could have, like, we should have had somebody on that wasn't like a white dude talking about the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. And like one person came to mind. I was like, damn it, I could have had this person on. And like it grew from like, listening to Kai. And like since then, like we've bonded over our mutual love of Ghost Adventures.
Nice.
And her making fun of me.
I started my friendship with him by threatening him, and it's going to continue the same way.
Foundation of all great
I'm so used to situations where I'm the only Indigenous person with eyes on this, or the only Indigenous person willing to say, like, I'm watching you. I'm watching what you're going to do and say. So, yeah, they did the best that they could. I would give them a good B for effort on that.
It could be worse.
No. And then Kai sent a picture of one of her uncles in regalia, like pretending to scout this white dude at a fucking reenactment. I was like, fuck. Like, I was like, Kai uncle's enjoying this a little bit too much, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the uncle looks scary as shit right now.
Nelson loves my stories about my uncle, who used to do a lot of reenactments. Since he got a permanent job, he doesn't do them as much anymore. But yeah, I told him all these stories about my uncle going into quote unquote British encampments at reenactments and stuff, and stealing all of their shit and war whooping in the woods to just make them piss themselves. Yeah, that's where my family comes from.
Like, oh no.
So my threat was actually pretty tame.
They're like, oh no, the ghosts, they're gonna get us. We just reenacted, it's not real.
Well, something that I thought of when you were talking specifically about that, using the image of like the ghost. I think it's sort of visceral and powerful, but in college football teams, it seems that both the legacy of colonization and the legacy of the Confederacy are like weirdly also perpetuated through the mascots of these college football teams. Does that sound right in the South specifically?
Oh, heck yeah. So where I grew up, if you were going to a college, if you're going to a state college, four-year college, you're either going to be a Gator or a Seminole.
Yeah, that's right.
And for the longest time, I didn't give a single shit about what the college experience was like if you went to FSU. I just didn't want to go somewhere where they had a mascot that was a Seminole. Nothing against a Seminole, like personally, but that image is that they've decided to use an entire tribe as a symbol of fierceness, I guess, because we need to scare our football opponents or something like that. And yeah, I mean, even though it doesn't necessarily pertain to the South, it is completely into wider U.S. sports as well. I mean, we only just recently lost the term Redskins from the Washington team. Very recently, that uncle that I was talking about that lives off grid was one of the plaintiffs in that case. Oh, wow. With Amanda Blackhorse. And then you have, the Indians and all of these, they only just got rid of the Chief Wahoo image. That horrible holdover from the 40s, I'm pretty sure. And it's just not taken seriously. Nobody has to take it that seriously because, it's either, we're honoring you, or it's not that bad, or, there's other things that we use as mascots that they don't complain about it. Basically, a lot of times it comes up as the Fighting Irish. The Fighting Irish did not have the same physical representations as any of these other teams. The FSU Seminoles don't really have that bad of a physical representation. However, a lot of the other ones definitely did. And when it comes to the Seminoles, as far as I know, and I'm not Seminole myself, like I said, they have an understanding between the tribe and the school has a specific allocation for Seminole students if they want to study there. I don't know if that's ever been used. I didn't go to the school. I'm not Seminole myself, but when I did look into it, there is a certain partnership when it comes to those in particular. But yeah, that's it's ripe for the picking, honestly. And I'm really surprised that it's 2021 and we're finally starting to lose these horrible representations.
Right.
Well, no, like my high school, when I played high school football, we were the Wetumpka Indians. And it would always be some white dude in fucking the most racist ass Indian face paint riding out on a fucking horse before the fucking games. And it's just like, yikes. And they still do it to this day.
Really?
Like, it's still the Wetumpka Indians. There's still white dudes painting their face up, riding out shirtless with a fucking spear.
Jesus.
For the games. Like, it's.
Did Tyler? Did Ole Miss? Are they still the Rebels?
No, that changed. I want to say about 2 or 3 years back.
Really?
Yeah, they're not the Rebels.
Yeah. I think they ditched their mascot too. But yeah, for all my childhood, it was the Ole Miss Rebels, and it was the Confederate looking dude, and like it even and the Confederate imagery in high school is like the Robert E. Lee generals. Like it's
Jesus.
There were, like Tommy said, there was a statue outside of Robert E. Lee. Like there's the Jeff Davis Volunteers and the Lanier Poets But like that imagery is so prevalent still, and it's finally getting addressed, and it's finally starting to come down because people are realizing like, hey, this is some racist bullshit.
Well, you can't escape it. I mean, growing up, like you had fucking heroes like the goddamn Dukes of Hazzard, whose their car was the General Lee, had a fucking rebel flag on the top. Like it's hard. It's so fucking hard to escape here. Like it's just.
And what's so crazy, what's so insane is that specifically Robert E. Lee, Jeff Davis, and Sidney Lanier High School are all like 99% black. And then when you have these school board meetings, all you see these old white people show up in opposition of it who have nobody at this school. No one. It's just that they went to this school like thousands of years ago, back when they did segregate and didn't let black people into the school. When they went there, they're like, you can't change the name of it. That's where I went to school and learned all my racism. Like, but I do have a traumatic story about how I was in high school band, and I was forced to play this song, the Tomahawk Chop. Are you familiar with that?
Vaguely.
Yeah, and I tell you, I had this old extremely racist drum major who would stand up and look me, like specifically
oh my
for some reason,
God.
directly
Shut
in the
the
eye.
Fuck up. I'm the drum major. I'm the one you're talking about.
I see.
Wait,
you,
Nelson,
Tommy.
you're the one who led the Tomahawk
Yeah,
Chop?
he did.
Jesus,
Nelson led the
Nelson.
Tomahawk Chop.
Tommy, you and I are
Nelson.
starting our own podcast.
That's fine.
First off,
You're canceled, Nelson.
We were the Knights, and it was an axe, and it was
Wait a
minute. If it's an axe, did you still have to do the
Did we?
all
Do
that?
that? Did we? I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Oh yeah. It was racist
Yeah,
as fuck.
that's the fucking
Oh,
Tomahawk
shit.
Chop. That was based on like native songs, Nelson.
Fuck,
Don't try to
dude.
give me We Were the Knights.
I'm fucking canceled from when I was 16 years old.
Well, they would do that thing in the audience too with their arms and everything.
Yeah. Sure
Oh,
did.
the fucking Braves, the Atlanta Braves. It's like, not forget, like the only Major League Baseball team like that anyone around here supports is they still have the Tomahawk Chop. Like,
Oh yeah. There's lots of stadiums and places where they've tried to get rid of those actions and songs and stuff like that. They won't play them like on the tannoy anymore, but people in the stadium will just do it on their own.
Just do it themselves. Yeah.
Like, just imagine if like fucking whatever they play in Germany, let's say soccer, had the fucking Berlin Zyklon B. It's the same thing.
Yeah. It's
Like,
incredible.
yo, those European soccer fans are racist as fuck, though. Let's not. They probably would totally be down for that. Like, they're fucking racist as shit.
Well, they have like the more fascist-based clubs, and then they have the anti-fascist clubs and shit. It's a whole culture over there.
Yeah, and they like, one of my favorite, Mario Balotelli, like the Italian striker, is black, and like they'll throw like bananas at him when he tries to play, and it's fucking horrible.
Well, they're just trying to raise his potassium, okay?
If we talk sports for too long, Tommy is going to break out in hives.
Yeah,
but
my
I will
eyes.
say, since I moved to Europe, it is definitely like, which football fans you need to steer way clear of because they are going to attack somebody.
I had my own experience with English football racists, okay? As I had a traumatic experience at a bar. I was watching the Euro final. I was rooting for Italy, and I got called by an Englishman a big-nosed cunt. And I was like, you know what? It's anti-Italian discrimination. And I'm not going to lie. For a second, I thought that when Tommy was going to talk about traumatic experience, I thought he was going to talk about how gamers are oppressed because Tommy before this was definitely playing Gears of War Live.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm so fucking oppressed as an Xbox Live gamer. Let me tell you, I can't go on there and say the N word anymore without getting banned. Like, man, that's so racist.
Reverse racism is real.
In that one instance. All right. Well, let's zoom in on this last question because I really do think it's important. And obviously, if anybody's listened to the last several episodes of Rev Left, it's a particularly unhealthy obsession I have, which is sort of staring into the abyss of climate change and trying to make sense of it. And it's clear that climate change is going to impact all of us, but each region of the country and the world really will face their own unique challenges and impacts. And the South specifically, from Texas to Florida and everywhere in between, the American West, the side with the wildfires, is really set up to face a lot of the impacts and has the sort of institutional class and racial segregation and poverty that will just make all of these disasters hit harder, be more disastrous, and impact the most vulnerable the most intensely. So just kind of go around the horn, and what are your thoughts on climate change? How has it already begun to impact the South, and how do you see it playing out in the years to come?
Brother, it's hot as fuck.
It's hot as fuck.
Hotter than it's ever been.
God, it's hot as shit. I'm not going to lie, man. It's like the devil's fucking armpit down here. But like with the humidity, it's god awful. Like I remember I had to go out and cut the grass, and I'm out there for like maybe an hour and a half, and like I come back inside just to take a break, cool off, and it's like I just got out of a fucking pool. Like I'm drenched. Like people like when we talk about heat in the South, and all of us can agree that like when you talk about heat in the South, it is different because like I had family that moved to Arizona, and they were like, it's 120 degrees, but that Alabama heat, you step off that damn plane and you just hit with that wall of humidity, and it's gross, it's disgusting, and you can't get in the shade to cool off because it's in the shade. And like it's like Tyler said, it's gotten worse. Also, and Kai's probably used to it more than all of us, but like hurricanes have gotten stronger. Like, and it's getting worse, and there are more of them every year, and they're getting more powerful. And what was the last one? What was it, like 2 years ago? The one that hit Mexico City Beach, the one that hit the Panhandle pretty hard. Harvey, was it Harvey that hit the Panhandle hard?
Harvey's the one that fucked Texas up real bad.
Yeah. No, what was the one that hit Florida, the Cat 5, that was like more damage than Katrina?
I can't remember the exact name of it, but it tore out like interstates, and like there were whole towns that were gone. There were interstates that were gone. It was bad.
It leveled, like Panama City Beach was fucked. Like I had a cousin that lived down there, and he was like, they were still pulling bodies out of these woods. Like weeks afterwards, people were dead. They didn't know. Damn. But like, it like that, like people, we all lived through and watched the images of Katrina, and like we're getting like Katrina level hurricanes more often than what we'd expect. I think they said the damage, I think it was Martin, that I can't remember. It was like 2018, but that hurricane structure, like more damage was caused by it than Katrina. Damn. And so like that's the major issue, because like right now we just had like 3 hurricanes like back to back to back, and it's getting to the point where like they're causing more damage, they're more powerful, they're displacing people. So like on top of it being just hot as shit, that whole season from like June to November is like everyone's just bracing for like when's the next big one going to come. And like I totally feel how like folks in the Pacific Northwest, like that fucking it's hot as shit up there, and people don't have air conditioners, and it's disgusting. And I try to tell people, open your windows, open your doors, and drink as much water as you can. Try to get the airflow going, because we've been dealing with that down here for as long as we can remember, and it's getting worse. And so obviously you're going to have people who can't afford electricity to have their AC on are going to be the ones dying of heat stroke. People out in the fields that have to work in the farms. Alabama in the South is still a massive agricultural industry, and it's migrant workers that are out in the fields, and they're dying of heat stroke because it's so goddamn hot, and it's going to get worse. And so, I mean, we all know we've got to get together and organize and whatnot, but like it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Climate change, directly affects the South in a lot of different ways. Especially, Florida shoreline is shrinking. Mar-a-Lago is projected to be underwater in the next 20 years. But it's so hard to get that kind of activism going in the South, I believe, because a lot of Southerners are entrenched in religion. Religion is very strong here, and it's hard to bring up, science without, being anti-religion. And some atheist Andes out there who can't really relate to people or talk to people. I have a hard time connecting these things in a way that it doesn't, turn off the religious, if that makes sense. But yeah, climate change is a huge issue. Oh, and I do want to talk about the fires in California for a second. Something that I learned from Kai, but when they stole this land from the Native Americans, and the Native Americans tried to teach them how to do control burns, and they're like, fuck that. And so, as you see what's happening now, everything is just engulfed in flames. Like, it's bad. No one is doing the due diligence to do anything. Scientists have said that, we are either at the point or past the point in which we need to act fast. And I don't think anything is going to happen in the near future. So I honestly believe we're all fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to disagree with you when you look around the country. I just watched a documentary today called Bring Your Own Brigade, and it's about the wildfires in the West, its relationship to climate change, but also a huge part of it is the mismanagement by the colonizers after they came over here, and the complete ignoring of indigenous ways of maintaining and managing the land for thousands of years before, colonizers came over, and within a couple hundred years, we have our entire planet on the brink of fucking collapse.
But hey, don't worry, because Jeff Bezos is going to space, guys.
At least we have that. At least we have that. So he can hover above us and watch us.
The United States of space.
Yeah. Fucking Elysium type shit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh
exactly. I just wanted to make this point too, about the heat in the South specifically. Is, the climate scientists are worried about heat waves because they can push what's known as the wet bulb temperature, the air plus humidity, together into high parts where a human body can't cool off. So if it's above 95 degrees Fahrenheit and the humidity is above 90%, the human body literally cannot sweat and cool itself off, and you can only live, even healthy, can only live for a few hours in those conditions. So you add that on top of poverty, on top of electrical grids going down because they're stressed with the people that do have AC blasting it, and it's just going to be very, very just terrible on the entire country, but that region in particular.
You're basically describing like Monday, it's just hot as shit.
That sounds like Florida every day.
It sounds like Alabama every day. It's between July and August is fucking god awful.
How many AC companies do we have? AC repair people?
Jesus, there's so many.
I can't tell you how many Facebook posts I see every day. Like, yeah, my AC is out. Yeah, my AC is out. It's just like going through ACs. My mom just replaced hers after 5 years.
Damn.
Just bought a new one.
My dad does this real delicate dance with the AC back at the house in Florida, where if you touch that thermostat any lower than 78 is still pretty warm for an indoor temperature. And we also have something called terrazzo floors in Florida, being as moist as it is. Terrazzo floors sweat when it's that hot and it's that humid. So the inside of the house is always moist and you can't have it any cooler than 78. If it's the middle of the night, you might be able to take it down to 76. But if you have it any lower than 78, it will basically burn itself out, and then you are screwed. And my mom has medical devices, and she needs to be kept at a cooler temperature because her health is fragile. So I've ended up having to buy them a generator with several forms of fuel and get them a window unit AC so that when the power when the power goes down, my mom can survive the heat. Like I said, I spent the first 20 years of my life in Florida. I was just used to it. And then when I moved to England, the summers have been getting worse. I know that they have been getting worse. And in England, people have built their houses for keeping in heat because winters are pretty shitty. So they've built all these houses for keeping in heat. We don't have large windows. We don't have large doors. Nobody has inbuilt AC systems. I've never seen a window unit in this country.
Wow.
So as the summers have gotten worse, there have actually been studies that up to 800 to 900 more deaths happen in hot summers in England than when we have a relatively mild summer. That 800 to 900 more people die during those time periods. And even though that's nothing to do with the South, I did grow up in the South. I know how to keep my house cool. I know how to keep myself cool. And I've personally watched older people in England wearing, your proper trousers, your proper shirt with a sweater vest. And it's like 90 degrees. And even though we would look at 90 degrees and say, well, that's not the hottest it's ever been. That's hotter than it is usually in England. And people die in that heat because they don't know how to deal with it. And it's not really their fault. They've never had to learn this before. But when it comes to climate change, especially in places like Florida, like we've been here, Florida, I feel like has been hearing the siren longer than a lot of other places because it all started with, sea level rise. And Florida is basically sea level. Most of Florida is basically sea level. We have one mountain. It's called Mount Dora. It's not a mountain. It's a hill. Yeah. So we've been hearing this kind of siren for as long as I can remember. I remember hearing it, when I was in elementary school back in the mid 90s. And we're used to the hurricanes, obviously, and watching the El Nino / the La Nina effect and how that's going to bring your hurricanes closer or push them farther away, how strong they get. By the way, Nelson, that was Hurricane Michael in 2018.
Michael, that was it. Okay.
It was only a Category 4. And
it was still
fucked
bad.
Panama City. So yeah, like when we're not in the current timeline with the virus and all that, I did used to go home for about 3 to 4 months a year, spend time with my family. And I would be home sometimes when hurricanes would come through. And the system for keeping power, for keeping water and everything, you'd think it'd be better in Florida, but it wasn't, because there was a lot of places where nobody was investing in infrastructure in Florida to keep things like power and keep things like water running when you have huge, natural events like this. They were only starting to change that maybe in the last 4 years that I was going home, where we would always lose power during a hurricane. We would always lose water. We would always have enough. So I was home when we had, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Imelda or something like that. It was an eye hurricane where we had a water oak, this gigantic water oak come down. It actually snapped the concrete base of the building it was next to. It snapped it in half up into the sky. And you would say, we're used to these hurricanes and all that, but they're happening. It's just back to back to back to back, and they're getting stronger. And if we're not going to exist, if we're not going to build our communities to exist with the weather, so I would say something, like the original structures in Florida from the indigenous people. You have chicos, which have your floor raised. You always build your large villages next to water so that you get the coolness from the water, the breeze off the water coming in. If you're not going to continue to create your communities in a way that exists with the climate there, then we need to invest in infrastructure to keep people just alive when these things happen. And there's a lot of places in the South, in Florida, in rural Florida, where nobody's put that infrastructure in, and people die as a result from it.
And then real quick, on the flip side of that, we saw what the fuck happened in Texas. Like with the massive snowstorms where people froze to death. And then people are like, oh, one of the biggest things that pisses me off and pisses probably all of us off is when Yankees be like, oh, they deserved it because blah,
Absolutely.
blah, blah. No, no one fucking deserves that, man.
There's like poor kids in trailer parks.
Exactly. They're poor kids. They're poor people, homeless people freezing to death. Like people literally froze to death in Texas. Like, that shit's wild. Like, because Texas is not just like the Pacific Northwest. People in Washington State and Oregon are dropping dead because the heat. Because you're not used to that. They're not used to southern temperatures. We're used to 120 degrees, 110, like with the heat index. Like it's July and August. Like, you're gonna have multiple days of that, and we know how to handle that. People in Texas, people in the South, like, do not know how to handle snow like that. And our houses, our homes, our infrastructure is not designed to take snowstorms. They do not have the snow plows. They don't have the salt trucks. They don't have the sand equipment. Like, they don't know how to, they don't even remember how to wrap pipes and shit. Like, it's not, they don't have these big, like I said, my mom's family's from New York. We don't have the big fucking gas powered furnaces in the bottom of the houses that like are 1,000 fucking degrees, right? And so, like, people are not used to it. 6 inches of snow shut down Atlanta.
Yeah.
6 inches of snow shut down the busiest airport in the world. So we're not used to this. And climate change, with it happening, is making people have to wake up, be like, shit, like, we have to do something. But it's the same capitalist class, the rich, that, like Tommy said, Jeff Bezos is going to fucking space, like Elon Musk and all them. They're punching their ticket out of here. And like Tyler says, like an Elysium type deal. Like it's like the rich are always going to be okay, and the poor are going to have to suffer. The rich people didn't freeze to death in Texas like poor people did. Rich people aren't dropping dead of heat strokes in the Pacific Northwest. Poor people are. So, and it's either we get back and we start listening. What Kai said, we listen to indigenous voices. Tommy said too, we listen to indigenous voices, like how to fix this, or we're all going to die.
I mean, Ted Cruz just bounced to Cancun while, poor people were freezing to death in Texas.
Out here. And then made fun of it at CPAC. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I remember that.
Fuck him.
Piece of
fucking
shit.
Zodiac killer.
Exactly.
He is a Zodiac killer.
Absolutely.
When we talk about COVID?
Yeah, I was going to say one more thing about COVID and we can wrap it up. But I'll just open it up because I know right now the South's being hit hard. I think 20% of all new cases in the U.S. are coming out of Florida specifically. ICUs are being overwhelmed. So tell me your thoughts on COVID and vaccine hesitancy in the South and where that comes from.
It's bad. We're at last time I checked, we're at negative 29 ICU beds in Alabama.
If you're fucking white, you have no reason to be hesitant about getting the fucking vaccine. If you're a person of color and you're a little wary, yeah, I can write that off. The Tuskegee shit, like that did happen. But like if you're a white person, you're scared to get the vaccine, you have no reason.
And like to piggyback what Tyler just said, like my mom is one of the people who's giving out the vaccine, right? And she's like, people are like, oh, it's black people not getting it. Oh, it's people of color not getting it. Mom's like, she's like, I see black families come in all the time because there was outreach to the churches, right? She's like, I do not see white people coming to get these vaccines.
I went to drop my fucking kids off at school last week, and there were parents out front of the school protesting their kids having to wear a mask. And when I drove past them, I couldn't help it but to roll down the window and just yell at them, "Get a fucking job, you losers!" And they were so upset. And these were like well dressed, like you could tell they were like upper middle class people, upset that their kids have to wear a fucking mask. The kid probably doesn't give a shit.
Exactly. It's about the parents. Exactly.
Get over your fucking ego. Like if my dad, the fucking Reagan baby who showed me Rambo at fucking 4 years old, can go get a goddamn vaccine, you can get a fucking vaccine.
Yeah.
I think a lot of hesitancy comes from just a lot of the misinformation that's out there, a lot of the misinformation that's peddled on Facebook, on Twitter, and on the news. Giving it an equal platform to actual science has been the most detrimental to this vaccine I've ever seen. I think Walter, I don't know, the guy on MSNBC, he went to his hometown, went to a hospital and talked to a bunch of people who haven't gotten vaccinated yet, but were in the hospital with COVID. And a lot of them, they weren't they weren't anti-vaccine. They were just hesitant. They just didn't know. They were just misinformed or misled by certain things. And they were like, well, I'll just wait. I just thought, maybe if I wait, see all this stuff and this stuff, wait till it gets FDA approved. It's all misinformation and all peddled by by people like Fox News, who, by the way, are all vaccinated. Exactly. Everybody who works at Fox News is vaccinated. Point blank, period. Yeah. They are vaccinated. Everybody in Congress is fucking vaccinated. Point blank, period. That is how it is. And they just peddle this bullshit and get people scared and they just, sit back and say, oh no, I'll just wait. And they die. They don't have access to Walter Reed Medical. They don't. Some of these people don't even have insurance. Like they don't. Some people, they did a study. Some people believe that you have to pay for this vaccine. A lot of people believe that you have to pay for it, that you have to have insurance to get it, and you don't. You can go right now. There are no lines. You can go right now and get your first shot. At least get one shot. Do something.
My mom had people come in with prescriptions. She's like, you don't need a prescription. Like, come on and get the vaccine. I have someone very close to me for personal reasons. Like, I don't want to put her shit out there, but like, I have someone very close to me who's an ICU nurse and has been dealing with COVID from the beginning. And she told me, she's like, I'm sick and tired of telling middle-aged white men that are yelling at me that they're going to die. And she was like, I want to yell at them back and be like, you're going to fucking die. But I can't. But it's like the angry, rage-filled, middle-aged white dude coming in who didn't get vaccinated, who thought that COVID wasn't bad, that it's just like the flu, blah, 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 whose oxygen levels are dipping into the 70s and needs to be intubated. And it's like, I want to go home. And she has to be like, if you go home, you're going to die. The amount of oxygen that you need you can't have that at home. You have to stay here. And it's like the look on their faces. She's had so many people like this look of regret, like wishing they had gotten the vaccine. And there's a number of stories from Alabama hospitals where doctors have been like, the patients are dying and they're like, can I get the vaccine now? And they're like, no, man, it's too late. Like, you're going to die. Like, or it's going to be bad. And to touch on what Tommy said, like, our Governor Meemaw, she is vaccinated, but she has not expanded Medicaid. And so our rural hospitals have all shut down basically. And people who live in counties without ICU beds, without access to regional medical facilities or hospitals or anything, have to travel to get some sort of health care because our Republican supermajority and our governor that people were praising a few weeks ago for, saying that we need to get the vaccine and we need to not tell people, we need to start blaming unvaccinated folks. And like everyone was like, I was like, no, man, fuck her, because she has not done anything to help people. And it's mind boggling because she's a cancer survivor. She's elderly. She has those conditions that would kill her if she got COVID. She is like prime target for like, she needs the vaccine. She got it. And she hasn't helped anyone get it. She has like the state government and her and all of them have not done anything to help people get the vaccine. They shut down rural hospitals. They make it goddamn near impossible to get health insurance. And they haven't expanded Medicaid and people are dying. And then all of it culminates into the fucking fascist Trump having his stupid fucking rally in Coleman, Alabama, and saying, oh, people, I got the vaccine. You have your freedoms. I got the vaccine. You should get it. And they booed him.
His ass, yeah.
They booed their God, their Lord and Savior. They booed. Mm-hmm. And they have literally, Trump and the Republicans and all those fuckers, those opportunist sons of bitches, they have created a monster that they cannot control now. And it's going to get worse because they literally, I never thought I'd see the day. The most racist fucking city in Alabama is fucking Coleman, Alabama. And they fucking booed him because he said, get the vaccine. That to me is fucking insane. And it's like, we are fucked if that is the mentality of people like that. And it's not Native Americans. It's not black people. It's not people of color. It is middle class, racist, petite bourgeois, white people that are the ones that
motherfuckers who are supposed to care about kids so much, but like they don't see that like this shit is starting to seriously fucking impact people younger and younger and younger.
Yeah, in Florida we have school districts that are just crumbling from within. I was just looking at, as I saw a story earlier, Brevard County has a good sized population. Brevard County has at least 10% of the school district is in quarantine right now. That's like 7,000 kids. I think it's closer to 8,000 kids are in quarantine right now. They have 7,000 staff. 10% of them are in quarantine right now. They have over 1,000 cases, and school started a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, all of my kids who are in school, like, we've all been notified from their teachers that each one of the kids, like, someone in their class has had COVID. One of them's in fucking daycare, and COVID's gone around in there. Like, it's ridiculous.
Horrifying.
Look, if you were in the military, which most of Americans were, you were strapped down and given all kinds of shit that you didn't know what was in it. You had to get vaccines. If you traveled outside of the country to certain places, you have to get certain vaccines. We should strap people down like we did in the Spanish flu and fucking give them the vaccine. Just fucking shoot people up. I swear to God, because that's the only way this shit's gonna change. That's the only way.
Yeah.
It's gonna.
If you went to public school, you got your vaccines. You had to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had friends that I know in the military that lined them up with a fucking gun. Pop, 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 pop. Got all the vaccines. My uncle was my dad's brother's one of those QAnon fucking psychos like my dad. And he loved going on fucking mission trips. He went on a mission trip. My cousin, who is the only other person that's left-minded like me in the family, on that side of the family, was like, Dad, you got shot up with like 20-something vaccines just to go to Haiti for a mission trip. Why won't you get the COVID vaccine? You don't know what the fuck they gave you.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have fucking injected you with a microchip there.
Yeah.
Like,
Or how about we just ship all the unvaccinated people to fucking New Jersey and tell them don't leave?
I support that.
Tyler, you don't understand, like, this podcast has like a reach. It's like 10 times more than ours. So now like the entire, someone's going to hear that.
That's all right.
No, but like, but yeah, fuck
It's
New,
okay. They're from New Jersey.
Yeah, they're from New Jersey.
Exactly. Fuck them.
But if people are gonna shit on the South, we could shit on New Jersey. But yeah, and on the flip side, the Navajo Nation, last time I heard, is 100% vaccinated. Like, it's fucking wild.
I would say for my part in this conversation that I'll compare and contrast two people in my family. My father, who is a white boomer who has several
Boomer gang.
pre-existing conditions, so many. And my uncle, who is Native American, who is I think on the cusp of boomer and Gen X. Neither of them are vaccinated. When it comes to my uncle, it's because based on where he lives, based on the education that he's had, based on being indigenous and knowing what kind of medical fuckery has been done to indigenous people for hundreds of years at this point, he is not vaccinated. And I will say right now that it's due to fear and the history of all of this. And I am way less likely to be angry at him. I don't like it, especially because my family works in tourism. He works in tourism in Florida. He is going to be in contact with so many people from so many places, and you never know what's going to happen. I don't like that he's not vaccinated, but I'm less likely to get into a full screaming argument with him than I am with my father, who has had every privilege growing up, except maybe money. That's maybe the only privilege that he does not have. Who white men don't get experimented on in the United States. White boomer men don't have to deal with the kind of interactions that we've found in the past where certain medications don't work on certain people of certain races because they never tested the interactions for people of those certain races. So he's never had to worry about that. He's never had to worry about anything. These vaccines are basically made for somebody like him, and he is still refusing because he's just inundated with Fox News, his own pharmacist. And I'll say now that where my parents live in Florida is very metropolitan, very kind of mixed. And when we moved there was no money in the area, but it has turned into a very upper middle class area over the last 30 years. There's nothing stopping him in this area, but he still refuses to do it with his pharmacist backing him, because the pharmacist has said from his mouth that it's not FDA approved and the whole virus is bullshit and all that. That this is a pharmacist saying this to my dad. And And my dad is the caretaker of my mom, who, as I said, is medically delicate. And if anything happens between them, if my mom is fully vaccinated, if anything happens with my dad, I need to get my mom out of that house as soon as possible, because even though she's vaccinated, I can't take the risk of her even getting a mild infection at this point. And if I have to move her out of there, I'm going to have to sit on a plane for 10 hours from the UK back to Florida so that I can take care of her, because she can't be left alone because of her various medical conditions. She can't be left alone. So I will have to go back and stay with her for as long as possible after possibly exposing myself on the flight, in the airports, getting to her, possibly getting a rental car and all that, so that I can take care of her. And my husband also has medical conditions. He has weak lungs. And even though he's fully vaccinated, if he gets even a mild form of this, I have to worry about him. So my dad's singular choice, because that's always his thing, is that it's his choice because it's his body, because why don't we just co-opt the entire, rhetoric of the abortion activists,
right?
Because it's fucking rich, if you want to ask me.
My body, my choice. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So he's decided. So this one choice that he's decided to make, if it works out poorly for him, he's going to ruin 4 people's lives.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't sink into his brain, because the one thing that he could say to me is, "Oh, I'm not afraid of death." It's not about you, motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally not about you. I'd have to leave my husband alone. I'd have to be on a plane for 10 hours. And my mom is going to have to move out of her house that she's lived in for 30 years because you decided not to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
My dad tried to string together completely illogical, just conspiracy boomer nonsense. And apparently the virus was made in a lab in Wuhan, but it's not bad, but the vaccine is bad. It was just literally there's a group, and it's bad. I get that we're not supposed to these generational wars. It's not the real thing. It's a class thing, but how poverty and how stuff overlaps in the United States with poverty and ethnicity, right? There's reactionary and boomerness fucking overlap.
Yeah.
And there's a group that's sounds like the ramblings of a lead poisoned baby boomer. And I'm just some of the shit that I hear them say is just from people that you thought were somewhat educated, is just mind boggling. My dad is your typical upper middle class boomer, went to college, petite bourgeois, and believes this shit. Will not get vaccinated. We have a running thing on the podcast to see whose boomer dad was going to get vaccinated first. Tyler won, and it's a neck to neck dead last between my dad and Kai's dad, who would be best friends in real life, but then they both give each other COVID. But it's completely mind boggling. I don't get it. I get this. I guess it's a generation divide. I don't know.
I had to fucking rob my dad.
You would think the people who grew up with the fucking polio pandemic and whose parents got them vaccinated for polio, fucking the good Italian grandfather in New York was a doctor and gave out free polio vaccines. My mom remembers getting a fucking smallpox polio vaccine. How those people don't realize how that shit was eradicated and think that the COVID vaccine's bad. It's fucking mind boggling.
It really is.
Yeah, even because of this anti-vax resurrection, polio has even come back in certain places. These all these diseases that we eradicated are popping back up because of this anti-vax rhetoric. That didn't just start because of COVID, but it's been going on for a long time. It just exploded because of COVID. And I do want to address because on Fox News they had a guy on there that said it was black people that were hurting the country.
The governor of Texas.
Weren't getting, yeah. That's demonstrably false. 100% false. In fact, they don't even break it down like that. It's broken down by party lines, and Republicans are the worst about the vaccines. But as far as African Americans go, there's a higher percentage of African Americans that are vaccinated than white people. Now, that being said, a lot of the vaccine hesitancy from black people, yes, there is some vaccine hesitancy, but a lot of it has to do with access to the vaccine. A lot of these communities in the South where black people are, a lot of these facilities are, were built, away from these black towns, from these black settlements. So they have to travel far where they don't have transportation to get to these places, or they're just too far away where they can't get to them. Now that is a situation that, is hard to overcome. But as a whole, as black people as a whole who can get the vaccine, who are able to get the vaccine, we are getting the vaccine. So that's just fucking bullshit right-wing talking points.
Absolutely.
I can't believe Greg Abbott fucking said that shit, man. Fuck him.
Yeah. Three times vaccinated, just like what Tommy was saying earlier. Like, Abbott is fully vaxxed, DeSantis is vaxxed, Trump is vaxxed, Marjorie Taylor Greene is almost certainly vaxxed, but they play into the bullshit, and their supporters are the ones fucking dying.
Yeah,
it's bonkers.
Look at where they're getting their money from. A lot of these people made money from COVID. A lot of these people invested in stocks, changed money. Kelly Loeffler, huge example, made billions off of COVID, which is insider trading. Don't know why she's not. Well, I do know why she's not in jail. She is white in America, and insider trading is, that's nothing.
That's a good felony.
That's just how you make money. If you're not insider trading, then you're not making money.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, these people are making money off of you dying. They're profiting from you dying, and you're just letting them do it, and they're just talking you into an early grave.
Yeah. Why they have the best medical procedure? Like when Trump got it, I mean, everybody kind of like, oh shit, it's gonna happen. Like it's gonna get his ass. But he got the best treatment in the fucking world, so of course he's not gonna die.
Fucking Bolsonaro in Brazil gets COVID.
Bolsonaro.
But whatever the
Bolsonaro.
Balsa wood down there. Bulbasaur down there in Brazil, man. He gets it every fucking week.
Yeah.
He's had COVID like 5 fucking times, dude. When the fuck is he gonna die?
For real.
Fascist
Before anybody wants to,
for real.
Before anybody wants to cancel Nelson or the rest of us for making fun of a foreign name, Bolsonaro is the fucking devil. I don't give a fuck what we do to him,
dude. Fuck him.
Yeah, balls are hard, bro. Is a pretty.
I really want to. I've tried to, like, we've said it before, but like I really having to watch what I say on because your podcast is like pristine compared to our our racket we got going.
Not anymore, Nelson. Go ahead.
We are the Southerners who brought the taint.
The South will rise again.
Hell yeah! And this Mad Max climate change future we'll have. The Southerners will be the ones.
Proletariat is taking over Rev Left Radio. I'm your host, Nelson. But no, it's like I've said before. I wish that fucking Greg Abbott, someone would just roll his ass off a fucking cliff, dude. Fuck him.
For real.
He really is like a fucking big piece of shit.
He's a fucking
and like
trash
all
bag.
of them, all the Southern Republicans, it's a fucking death cult. Like people are like the Republican, like it's funny when like it's not funny, but it's funny if you're a Southerner. They're like that didn't vote for Trump. It's like people are like, oh my God, Trump, how could this happen? It's like, dude, Trump's been saying the same shit we've been hearing from fucking boomers at bars that we worked at since fucking 2010. Like they all these people. When the Republicans swept like Southern state houses in 2010, they all were saying the same shit that Trump said. The fucking the people at the fucking bars that we worked at in the service industries and everything. I probably heard it in the entertainment in Florida. Like they all literally were saying the same shit that Trump said, and it culminated in 2016. When I saw that like Ohio was going to go for fucking Trump, I'm like, all of that. I was like, it's done. It was just like that that mentality has spread. A reporter down here coined it the Alabamification of America. Like I hate it. It is as from a podcast it's supposed to be like I said, like we're saying this is a different version of the South. No, this fucking racist piece of shit, and they're all fucking elected. They come from the South. And Mo Brooks is a goddamn fascist, dude. Fuck him.
Truly a fascist.
I love how he got fucking
You think
booed.
Trump's fucking scary? Look up goddamn Emery Flomer.
Oh my God, dude! Yeah,
Oh, dear God.
Little fucking Pinochet.
Really?
Fucking our fucking mayor that we had for like 30 years, from like the 70s, like maybe like from the all the way to 1999. Emery Fulmer, they called him the little dictator. He fucking. I had people I worked with. Tyler worked with them too in back of the house. That fucking told us that Jump Street fucking in the 1980s would drive around and fucking scoop. Third shift would scoop around right around Montgomery, scoop up black folks and beat them with fucking. Phone books. And like he was a monster, and he was Republican, and he was a fucking monster.
He would ride around hanging off the side of the SUVs, smoking a cigar with a big ass fucking revolver on his hip.
Yeah, everywhere he went with bodyguards and fucking pistols and shit. It was crazy. And the one ironic fucking thing about that is when the Klan tried to march through Montgomery in like the 80s, he like met them at the border of the county and told them they couldn't march through. I don't fucking, what the fuck? It's weird. It's like one of those weird things, but like fucking, no, he was a fucking, the shit that he did was, he fucking ran this town like a fucking dictator.
Yeah, and his family comes with big money. Like it's that old money. Like
he's one of the families.
Yeah. Family.
Yeah.
He probably met them at the border and told them they couldn't march because it's just territory at that point. You don't need the Klan if you're already doing it yourself.
I own the racism in this town.
That's the thing. He didn't want someone out racist him. He's like, hold on here. This is my town.
God damn.
Like, we don't want the Klan here because I'm the biggest racist in these parts, rootin', tootin', varmint.
Nobody beats on my blacks but me.
Jesus Christ.
The Klan, have you not seen my police force?
Yeah, holy shit, yeah.
It was all of them. They were just in the hoods.
God damn. Absolutely.
You just want to march, we beat them with phone books.
God.
It's
Man,
like,
these are rookie tactics. What do you mean you're going to march?
but oh my God, it's just
Last guy marched through here stirred up a whole bunch of trouble.
We had to get the fire hose.
oh man, fucking
George Wallace too. Let's not forget George Wallace.
Fuck him, dude. I took the best. Okay, I know we got to. I know. Like,
what do you mean?
Yeah.
Fucking
George Wallace and Biden are best friends.
One of the best things I heard about Wallace was in this. If anyone like, there's a great song by Drive By Truckers called "3 Alabama Icons," and they had the best line about George Wallace. He said, "And George Wallace was burning in hell, not because of his overt racism, but because he did." In the 80s, the last time he ran for governor, he did this whole apology thing and won like 90% of the black vote and ended up opening up like the state to the administrations to black people faster than the federal government in a lot of northern states. But they say he's burning in hell because he was just an opportunist piece of shit that in his quest for power, he threw black people under the bus and made their lives fucking hell. And that's why he's burning in hell. Because he's just him and Strom Thurmond and all those fucking racists that are now it's like every time you see like a Rand Paul
Hold on now. You got to stop throwing Biden's friends under the bus now. Like
make him look bad.
But it's like someone should. I'm not artistically inclined in any way, but someone should do like a thing where it's like you take like Mo Brooks and Rand Paul and like some other like prominent Southern Republicans, right? And like put them in the foreground. In the background, they should just have the fucking like hovering over them, just like a fucking shadow of like Wallace and Senator Eastling and Strom Thurmond, because they're literally saying the same exact shit, just with dog whistles. Like, if anyone really wants to know what the South is like, anyone wants the politics of the South, listen to the fucking what's his face got caught on a hot mic. God, Lee Atwater.
Atwater's the other one. Yeah, Goldwater, Atwater.
Yeah, if you really want to hear about the party switch and you want to hear what modern day Republicans sound like and where they got the ideology from, listen to Lee Atwater on a hot mic talk about the Southern strategy, because he literally coins it. It's perfectly. And I'm not going to repeat what he says because he uses some pretty fucked up language, but like he basically lays out the pattern of going from being overtly racist to dog whistles and how it's the same exact thing.
Absolutely. And just to add to that last point, libertarianism, right? Libertarianism in America is just racist Southern authoritarianism turned into one giant ideological dog whistle.
Jesus, thank you.
Let me tell you. Fuck libertarians, okay? Like libertarians at your best, you advocate for child sex. Like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of here.
My favorite quote that I think I coined is, if you push a libertarian down the stairs, they'll be a fascist before they hit the bottom. Because you put libertarianism under any real world pressure, it's just straight up right wing authoritarianism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because Barry Goldwater, like I guess the champion, like right libertarianism as a Republican, literally came to Alabama and they welcomed him with open arms. And he was the first like Republican to really crack the Deep South. since Reconstruction, and it's because he championed segregation, quote unquote, states' rights. So like when people are like the party switch didn't happen, blah 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 blah, it's like it did, and there's plenty of proof out there.
And still today, Confederate apologists say that it was a war about states' rights, not about slavery.
We have
that
a whole
libertarianism.
Episode. Yeah,
I know
we
you
have
do.
a whole episode about that.
Brother.
They'll tell you
One
what,
of my favorite
brother.
Nelson quotes is if libertarians had their way, child workers would be buying heroin with Bitcoin.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
They're fucking
I mean, name
dystopian.
one member of NAMBLA that's not a libertarian. Just name one.
Exactly. There are none. The Libertarian Party and NAMBLA are completely overlapping circles.
Exactly.
The same thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that amazing note, we are up at 2 hours here. So, first of all, thank you all.
We got a whole another hour, man. We got to break that Stalin episode and that fucking mandatory OT Blair Mountain shit. All right, we got another hour and a half of this shit, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, time we'll bring the drinks and then we'll do a 3-4 hour episode. You know.
Oh, man.
Oh, y'all didn't? I did.
I forgot mine. All right. Well, seriously, honestly, thank you so much, all of you, for coming on. Nelson, Kai, Tommy, Tyler. Absolute pleasure to finally speak with you. And yeah, let's do it again sometime. People definitely check out Dixieland of the Proletariat, and I'm actually going to let you plug that before we go. So, where can listeners find you and your show online?
First off, Brett, okay, we're all Southerners, right? We know what a backhanded compliment is when we fucking hear one, all right? So you're telling it, you just like told us all go fuck ourselves.
I would never.
he was like, bless his heart, like to all of us. Yeah, so check us out, Dixieland the Proletariat or Dixie Prol, wherever you get your podcast. We go through Libsyn, but we're on iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere but SoundCloud, because fuck SoundCloud, because we had a huge problem with them when it came to our No Evil Foods episode, and they didn't put back up that episode when No Evil Foods pulled their bullshit. If you want to hear about that, we got 3 episodes on it. But yeah, basically everywhere you can listen to podcasts, we're on there. We have a Patreon where we donate our monthly surplus to groups that are run by and/or help marginalized people directly. We just redid the tiers. It's $1, $3, or $5. With that, we have a Discord. We have Patreon-only episodes, a series called After Dark, where we talk shit until Tyler says some shit that's completely off the fucking rails, and then we have to end it. We got
edit it with elevator music.
Elevator music. We're on every social media platform: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok.
Yeah, Nelson's favorite, TikTok.
I fucking hate TikTok. Instagram, everywhere. Twitter.
And we're on Twitch. Watch the show.
Oh, yes. Okay. Here we go.
Watch me play games shittily.
Yes.
And but most importantly, we do react content. We do a lot of stuff that we can't do on the podcast. And we also play Jackbox games, nice, which are pretty cool. Anybody in the show, if we have open space, you guys can join in and play with us. It's fun. We have a good time. Wild. That's on Saturdays, every other Saturday. When Tommy remembers. When I get my shit together.
I will say that all the good ideas mostly come from Kai, and she tells me, and I forget about them. And then like 3 months later, I'm like, we should do this. And Kai's like, you fucking white bastard. I told you this 3 fucking months ago, you colonizer piece of shit.
I did tell him to put the episodes on YouTube about a year ago, and they just started. Jesus Christ.
And so, but yeah, we're working with a cast. I'm trying to get them to get the Patreon only episodes up in more places, but apparently some apps don't really like that, especially the big ones. So hopefully those episodes are on YouTube as well. Like I said, through our Patreon, but you can listen to them, like I said, through our Patreon. Basically, just type in Dixieland the Proletariat or Dixie Prol on Google, or if you still use Ask Jeeves or wherever, Yahoo.
And .prol on Twitch.
Yes,
yeah,
DOT Prol.
DOT Prol on Twitch.
Yeah.
And yeah, support us on there. Tommy is the anti-Hassan Piker.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't have a $3 million house. I'm just saying.
Tommy rents a house with one of his friends, and he doesn't have central heating.
Look, I know no shit on Hassan Piker for getting that house. Good on you, man. Big ups.
All right.
Leftists can have houses. Okay.
I agree with that. All right. Well, I'll link to all of that in the show notes, or at least as much of that as I can. And I have to say, if you guys do a Jackbox thing, invite me on. I love playing that shit. I'd love to come on.
Oh,
and
fuck yeah, man.
That'd be
fun.
Yeah, dude. Hell yeah.
I do have to say that our Jackbox games get a little spicy.
Oh, my God.
Fuck it.
fucking Jackbox. Woo, talk about George. Talk about George Wallace.
If anybody wants to cancel you, it's going to be from a Jackbox game, okay?
Talk about fucking woo. But yeah, we have a link tree. So I have the one
nice.
link that gives you fucking everything. So you don't have to put like all the fucking things in there. But yeah, if you hit us up on social media, you're 9 times out of 10 going to talk to me. So I'm already sorry about that from the beginning.
Or me if I wake up early enough.
That is true.
Nelson to it.
And if if it's Twitch, it's definitely Tommy because I don't know how the fuck that shit works. But yeah, we got merch too. We have a merch store. We just got T-shirts designed. One of them has Tyler's beautiful face on it, and it's they got some cool shit. And we got a sticker that Kai designed, and
don't forget the Yolidarity sticker for me.
The Yolidarity sticker, Kai. We have the no place for fascism, hatred, etc. Whatnot. We got our logo. We got the Tyler for Coroner, Elmore County Coroner. Yeah, so we got a bunch of shit. So just check us out wherever you get your podcasts, etc.
Oh, I'll link it all in the show notes with that link tree. And yeah, hit me up anytime. Let's do it again. I love what you're doing at Dixieland of the Proletariat. Keep it up.
Dude, can I say one more thing before we sign out?
Real quick. Yeah, I know what you're gonna do. Real quick though, Brett. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much. You're literally. I want to say guys, but we got Kai. I told all of everybody here that this is like I see Rev Left as like the gold standard. And so like for 2 years ago, day one, I was like, God, if we just get on fucking Rev Left.
Yeah, he's been talking about this.
I've been talking about this for like 2 fucking years. So like for you to be like, you can come on my podcast and let us into your space, dude, that means the world to me. And our fans are fucking wild and they're so happy that this happened. And I'm not gonna lie, dude, I was fucking shitting my britches. I was so goddamn nervous. I was just like, dude, this is fucking Brett from Rev Left Radio. Like, do you fucking understand? Like, this is God tier level shit.
Well, I deeply, deeply appreciate that. That seriously means the world to me. And the know that I played any role at all in helping influence or inspire you to create Dixieland and do what you do, it's incredibly humbling. So I love having you on, and I would love to do it again.
Hell yeah, dude, for sure. Tyler,
take us out.
Okay, well, to everybody who listens to Rev Left Radio, from all of us at Dixieland of the Proletariat, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll see y'all next time.